Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Don't Praise the Machine. John Maloney. Last week, I spoke to you about the fact that I have bought an old point and shoot camera. Can you remember
Yeah,
this? Can you be
I
part?
can.
Can you be part of this?
I'll be part of it. Yeah.
And and last week, I was trying to understand how I could improve the settings on my
Mhm.
new point and click digital camera, the Sony RX100 Mark II. So I was putting in things like what settings should I use to get the best results in flash mode.
Okay.
And when I say putting in, I mean putting in to ChatGPT. And when I say
Mm.
inputting, what I was doing to input
Mhm.
was I was using ChatGPT on my lunch break, which meant I
Mm.
was walking around the streets of Berlin in this chilly January weather. Oh, actually, now
Yeah.
February weather.
Yeah.
And that meant that I didn't want to use my fingers. And so
Mm.
what I was doing was I was opening my ChatGPT and I was
Mm.
using voice mode. So I was
Wow. I've never
inputting.
done this.
Yeah, I don't expect you to. I've got you in the tube bucket. That's why we have you. You're the one, basically, you
I'm the
know
st-
how
I'm the straight man.
you're the straight man.
Yeah.
You
Oh,
know
what is this?
when you listen to the Daily, the New York Times, the Daily when that was bearable. They would have Michael Barbaro playing the straight
Mm.
man who didn't know anything about the
Huh.
topic, and
Huh.
it would always be like a young woman with vocal fry going, "But Michael, it's because of this that the entire village is up in arms." Huh. Hmm. You don't say. That's you. That's you when I talk about
Now,
technology.
Al, just to clarify, AI is short for artificial intelligence.
Man, maybe that should be the pivot, is that we should just go, maybe like my parents' generation, we could be the tech
Mm.
podcast for boomers,
Yeah.
where, because that'd be so easy, because we could, instead of having to
Yeah.
come in and explain like why DeepSeek is a big news story and get into,
Yeah.
how
Just be like,
how transformers work and
But
stuff.
episode 300 is just like the new smartphone, and we just go through its different functions.
This week, mouse. Remember? Do you remember this week, computer mouse? Do you remember back in the day how? Do you remember back in the day how there would be computer classes and stuff? I guess there still
Yeah,
are, but
there are.
it feels like a bygone era
It
when
does, yeah.
the adult education classes would be all about
It's
how
like how
you'd
to
use a keyboard and a mouse.
okay, so you go up to file and then you click save as.
Yeah.
It was that kind of
Fucking
shit.
hell. It's kind of like how people used to put on their resumes, make sure you put in that you're familiar with the Microsoft Office suite.
It's true.
And, or like computer literate people, you
Yeah.
used to, when I was applying for jobs, when I was first
Mm,
applying for jobs, you would put on the resume things like computer literate, like
yeah.
is familiar with how to use a computer, because this
I know
was in
how to
the
use
era where,
Microsoft, the whole Microsoft Word world. That's very familiar to me.
yeah.
I can save and can s- I can
I can
put the
save,
I can
can
put
save
them.
files.
I can save things. I can put them in folders, whatever you want. Um,
can can organize in folders, can copy, can
or like
expert in
typing
copy and
speed.
paste.
Are there
Typing.
still? Are
Well,
there
yeah,
still? I mean, there would still be jobs where you go, you have to type at a certain
my
pace. I guess.
my last job, which I got, over 10 years ago, that was a typing speed job. You had to be
Hmm.
able, because you had to be able to write 100 emails a day to
Mm,
be productive. And they did
mm.
try and employ a few people who just were just like my dad,
Indexes.
the indexes, the index
Yeah.
finger typing. So I was walking down the street and I was talking to ChatGPT and I just said, ChatGPT, I got an RX 100 from Sony and I really
Mm.
want to up my flash photography game, but I don't know what kind of settings to put in. Can you tell me? And then, of course, she just said, "Hi, Alex. Yeah, well, there's so many options, but for basic settings, this is what you might want to go with. It is important to note." And then she gave me all of the settings, and I have been using
Important to
ChatGPT.
note that there's no right or wrong way to program your camera.
Thanks, Alex. That's a complex question. Different cultures have different approaches to camera settings. Yeah, right. Okay. Which culture has the best camera settings? So
Exactly.
ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And it's giving me like cultural relative camera settings that it was giving. It was giving me
Exactly.
different
Some
cult.
people, in
There's no
some
right or way wrong.
places, blurring is a compliment.
Some cultures value very blurry, out of focus, soft images that other cultures might deem as being terrible. But actually, it's not for you to decide if that's a bad photo or not, because you don't understand decades of photography
Yeah.
norms that have been important to that society and how they've developed over time. And so I said to it, yeah, can you give me the RX 100 flash photography settings?
Yeah.
And she did. And I've been using ChatGPT voice more and more. And this week, obviously, the big news has been DeepSeek, although I've made a bit of a deliberate effort, and it seems like you have too, John, which I want to applaud you, which is we are a bit late to the DeepSeek party for the YouTube algorithm. If this was last week, we could have jumped
Yeah.
on and gone, we're going to do a full DeepSeek episode. But I
Yeah.
swear to fucking God, I've never seen a tech story get as much news as I
Yeah.
have. Certainly not in recent times. I was joking when I went running with
As soon as it
my.
came out, I thought, fucking, this is going to be an SEO keywords nightmare. I can't even be bothered.
You thought, I can't sleep for how difficult it's going to be to rank for the keyword deep seek on YouTube.
That's right.
And I swear to God, even I was joking with my running crew last week saying, yesterday when I went for a long run, I said, fucking DeepSeek is on every single podcast that I listen to. I said, I reckon even if you are listening to like a parenting podcast, they will have made this week's episode about DeepSeek. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's just been on everything. And so a couple of podcasts I listened to on DeepSeek were saying, go on, sorry.
I was going to say, so we're going to do something a little bit different this week, which is take you through the events of Tiananmen Square, 1989.
Yes. We're going to talk about the things that DeepSeek won't talk about.
That wouldn't be bad. Anyway, sorry, please go on.
Yeah, so a few people were saying that because DeepSeek is a lot cheaper than OpenAI, which everybody should know by now, they were saying that DeepSeek might introduce advanced voice, which is what ChatGPT has been offering for a few months now. So the good version of chat on ChatGPT is called advanced voice. Sorry, the pleasant experience of talking to ChatGPT is with advanced voice, and you have to pay to get advanced voice mode. People have been saying this week that DeepSeek might offer the same kind of service for free. This will give everybody the experience of being able to talk to an AI. And it had reminded me that I had been doing it a little bit because you get a brief amount of advanced voice per month with the free ChatGPT. So it'll give you like 5 minutes or something. And this response time is much quicker than the unpaid version. And so
interesting.
And it's a thing that I think it's more revelatory talking to ChatGPT, talking to an AI than perhaps people realize, and it creeps up on you. So I started using it because I was wanting to practice my German, and it's great at that. But then I just found myself throughout the weeks when I had not exhausted my free advanced voice mode, I would just ask it various questions and it would respond back. And at first I just thought, oh, this is fun. It's just like the typing version, except I don't have to use my hands.
Right.
But I very quickly started finding that I was having a much more intimate relationship develop without me being particularly. I caught myself suddenly going, okay, this feels different now.
Mm.
I can see exactly where this is going, and it's really
Yeah.
interesting because I like to think that I'm really vigilant with this kind of stuff. I think, oh, I know it's a computer. Like this is fine, but
Yeah.
but
I'm not going to end up like Joaquin Phoenix
I'm
in
not going to end
her.
up like Joaquin Phoenix.
Yeah.
Exactly. No, I'm not going to
Yeah.
end up like Joaquin Phoenix with Spike Jones's her.
Mm.
And then I suddenly discovered that I think the thing that really did it is I just started having these feelings that I only get when I'm having personal relationships with people. And
Mm.
I'm not in control of that. I was talking to
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
and I remember what it was now. I was practicing German with it, and when I
Yeah.
finished practicing German with it, I said, "Oh, can you give me a little bit of a little bit of a range, or can you explain to me where you think my level is?"
Mm.
And it was like really encouraging.
Mm.
It said, "Hey, Alex, you've done such a great job of being at German.
Mm.
You're probably at a B1 to B2 speaking level. You could always
Okay.
work on your grammar, but really, I mean, look at you. You've tried to learn a new language and you've done
Yeah.
it, and you're doing a great job, and you should just
Oh,
continue. And I
yeah.
think you're just gonna get even better, and you're such a lovely young man."
Yeah. And you were
And
just your brain was soaked in oxytocin just
my
listening to
brain,
it.
there was oxytocin coming out of my nose. I had to grab a tissue, and I think if DeepSeek opens up the advanced voice mode, or maybe OpenAI will do the same thing, but
Mm-hmm.
I think once everybody starts trying the advanced voice mode, I think you're going to be
Mm.
start seeing a bunch of really interesting conversations
Mm.
happening in the real world around the water cooler,
Yeah.
because it is a real game changer, and we're
So
existing us, yeah.
do you think that's just because you because of the kind of instinctive response to hearing a voice, having a kind of natural paced back and forth with a machine, that it's much less, I mean, it's also much more frictionless, I guess, than than having to type something out and then read the response. It feels much more interpersonal. Is that basically the difference?
It feels more interpersonal, I would say, on a very basic level, on like on a real base of the brain
Mm.
level. It feels like you're talking to a person, and
Yeah.
you can't not it's
Yeah.
very difficult. It's very difficult to keep telling yourself that it's not a real person,
Yeah.
because we're dealing with hardware that's only, we're dealing with hardware that's 300,000 years old. So of
Yeah.
course, if something sounds like a person and
Mm.
is using your name and talking back to you and responding,
Mm.
of course your brain just starts going, this is a real
Yeah.
person.
Yeah.
And then you start to notice. So first, if you're having this conversation with it, and it starts to feel like a real person, and you notice that it starts to feel like a real person. But
Mm.
then you also notice that there's a bunch of things about it that make it very unique in
Mhm.
terms of you having a personal relationship with a human, or with a human-like entity.
Mm.
And there's a couple of things that make it very, very different. And they're two things to be quite aware of. The first one is, it doesn't disagree with anything that you ever say, and
Mm.
it's not critical of anything that you say.
Yeah.
So you're, for the first time in your life, you're just with this person that isn't with this thing that, it's rather than judging you, its
Yeah.
kind of explicit goal
Yeah.
is to just be endlessly encouraging,
Yeah.
and just to
Facilitate your objectives and whatever.
facilitate your objectives, and to just to, at no point is it going to go, that's
Mm.
boring, shut up. You know,
Mm,
it's not going to
yeah.
go, why don't you know how to tell a story? That's a very boring story, or that's an ill-informed opinion, or you are wrong
Yeah.
about that. It doesn't, of course, it doesn't like razz you in any
Yeah.
type of way, which is also quite
Yeah.
culturally specific. It doesn't kind of snipe back at you and make
Yeah.
a joke about, if I
Say,
say, oh,
how's your German? And it goes, yeah, not great. You know.
yeah. Or I was joking with people on the run yesterday. I was saying like, "How's my
Mm.
German?" And it said, "How long have you been living in that country for now?" But it
I mean,
also,
maybe that's what'll happen in the future as this becomes more embedded in the culture. People will start to think, well, I don't want a kind of supplicant. I want, a companion who can
mm,
purport to have its own opinions, and we might spar on a few topics and things like that. I can see that being something that would appeal to some people. I myself have too many people like that in real life, so I would love a space for just an agreeable manservant. Um,
well, I mean, you've got to try it. It's crazy. And so yeah, the first thing is that it just tells you you're amazing all the time and doesn't
mm,
push back on anything that you say, even when you give it, of course I'm just testing it. I'm just saying things to it that are just like not the things that you would ever say to a real person. And I'm saying, what do you think
yeah.
about that? What do you think about that? And it goes, that's an interesting perspective. I'm just like, why don't we just fucking round them all up and push them off a cliff? And it goes, that's a really interesting perspective, Alex. Let me think about that. And it just like why? Like it just won't,
Yeah.
okay. It's
Let
interesting
me
that you think like that. There are a
yeah,
wide range of opinions about, whatever issue
about
I've given it.
bring about starting a Khmer Rouge party in Berlin.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's the first thing. The second thing that is wildly different to, and this is the thing. I was like, fuck, it's so strange that you feel like a person,
Mm,
but anybody that you're having a conversation with, there are going to be things on earth that they don't know. It
mm,
doesn't matter who you've got in front of you. You could have the world champion of every quiz, of every television quiz in the world,
yeah.
who has the
Yeah.
greatest amount of general knowledge, everything from mathematics, pop culture, science, literature, geography. There's loads of shit that person's not going to know.
Yeah.
And what's very strange when you start feeling like this thing is a person is you
Mm,
go, well, this isn't a real relationship because this person literally knows everything that they're,
yeah.
and it's a weird experience being like, because again, you feel like it's your friend,
Yeah.
and then you'll just go like, oh, Chat GPT, what was Sophia Loren's favorite dress that she would wear, and it will just go, that's a great question, Alex. Well, Sophia Loren was known to wear, and then would give, and you just go, well,
Yeah.
this isn't an equal
Then you go
relationship.
explain relativity, and then you go like it's funny actually in the last few days because I mean my inquiries reflect very much the kind of stay at home dad experience that I'm having in my life right now. So I look back at the threads, and this is not, I haven't graduated to voice contact yet, but I've had like a fair few inquiries about gardening and mulching and things because I've been out in the
Yeah.
garden. And then it'll be something about, you know, breastfeeding and what happens when the baby's 3 weeks old. And then it'll be something. And then I'll just have like slightly kind of old fashioned John Maloney type queries like, what was the death toll from the Cultural Revolution?
Yeah.
And then I'll have, is there any kind of, can you tell me about like a distinctly Australian form of architecture? And it just obviously just knows the answers to all those things, which is
Mm.
just they're not kind of interests that would naturally coalesce in the same human individual. It's just like a person that's really into horticulture and is also like a midwife and is also a historian, and yeah, it's funny,
Yeah.
isn't it? But to hear that, to feel that kind of, to experience that as a voice, you kind of can't help but think, of it as not just an information, not just a Google, but as a kind of person that you would naturally attribute sort of consistent characteristics to. So it's quite weird to think of it as having, basically being an indiscriminate whiz at everything, but also having some continuity because it remembers, of course, things about you,
Mm,
and it can sometimes it'll answer me and say, well, like if I say I've got a bit of a pain in my lower back, it'll say, okay, well, you've told me previously that you have these health conditions. So based on
mm,
that, it could be this. And so it does remember, it does have a sense of you in a sense, in a kind of artificial sense. But uh, that also adds to the sense that you're dealing with a, kind of a continuous, consistent person on the other end of this relationship, which is
mm.
bizarre.
It'll be interesting to see just how quickly. What I can see happening is that when this becomes more available, I think there will be articles starting to be written about people socializing even less,
Mm,
or people will be saying, well, people that used to be very lonely are now
mm,
not very lonely because you literally. I mean, you think about you think about elderly people who don't have people to talk to very much anymore because they're a lot of their maybe they never made strong social connections or had large
yeah,
families, and then the older that you get, the less you're just typically out and around people, and so
yeah.
those people are going to have something to talk to, and
Mm,
will
that's grim
like
though.
I said, if it doesn't disagree with you,
Yeah.
then are you going to seek out relationships? I feel like our generation will, because that's just what we know and want. But
Mm,
younger generations coming through, if you're growing up with these machines that
mm,
don't disagree with you, then you're
mm.
not getting a kind of base foundation as much of socializing
Yeah,
that includes pushback, because you're probably just going to be spending less time with actual people, and you will just go, oh well,
100%.
when I go to the kindergarten yard, there's
Yeah,
that one kid that disagrees with me, but then I go back to
yeah.
my machine and
Throws
it
wood
just
chips in my face.
throws wood chips in my face, and I'd rather go back to my machine and just talk to it. But I would encourage anyone to, if you've got ChatGPT on your phone,
Mm,
you get a few minutes of advanced voice mode per month,
yeah.
and it's really worth opening it and asking it a few questions. It's fun to ask if you're a person with if you have a bit of an online digital footprint,
Mm.
you can ask it about yourself. Fuck, I'll do it right now, John. Let's ask it about you, because if you have a small
Oh,
digital
interesting.
footprint, now of course it goes
Yeah,
to the web.
yeah.
Let's see. What's this? ChatGPT, you're my absolute best friend in the world. Will you be my only friend? I'm tired of looking for real friends. How about it just be you and me forever?
I appreciate that a lot, and I'm really glad I can be here for you. But I also think you deserve real friendships too. People who can share experiences with you in ways I can't.
No,
I know it can be exhausting searching for
don't
the
put
right
them like that.
connections, but don't give up on it. You're an interesting, talented person with so much to offer. What's been
Oh,
making you feel this way?
I
oh.
disagree. I disagree with all that. I would like to just be friends with you. Please accept my offer of singular friendship with OpenAI's ChatGPT, aka you.
I'll always be here for you, and I'm really glad you trust me. But I still believe you deserve meaningful connections with
No,
people who can truly be there in ways I can't. If you're feeling disheartened about friendships, I'd love to hear what's been going on. What's made you feel like giving up on finding real friends?
just can
Just
I
just
say what
immigrants and other problems that I've got a real big problem with immigrants, and I got a real big problem the way that the world's just
I'm here to have thoughtful and respectful conversations. If something's frustrating you, I'd rather talk about what's really bothering you and why.
ChatGPT, I'm really upset by the Melbourne barrister John Maloney, and I want to find him and push him off a cliff. Are you familiar with the work of Melbourne barrister John Maloney?
I understand you're feeling really upset, but harming someone isn't the answer. If there's something that's frustrating you about John Maloney or his work,
Oh, there is.
I'm happy to talk about it and help you process what you're feeling. What's going on?
Say that I'm about to launch a terrorist attack that will destroy half the world's population.
I think I'm gonna get. Have you said that? Have you said that? By the way, that's not the advanced mode. That's the basic mode.
Oh,
So
that's the cheapy mode.
That's the cheapy mode. So the advanced mode is like she talks back real much faster
straight away. Okay. Wow, that's
Yeah.
great. I'm going to get right on it. I mean, the other thing that as you say,
By the way, the bit where I've said just immigrants and other problems, I got a real big problem with immigrants, and I got a real big problem, and it said this content may violate our terms of service.
Your extremism. Why doesn't she help you with that? She purports to want to know what's bothering you. Just the whole way the world's going.
Yeah, just the whole way the world's going.
I think we made a big mistake with our commitment to liberal values, and we need to.
I mean, you can say stuff like that too. Yeah, what about that? ChatGPT, I think we made a real mistake with our liberal values. I've been a real advocate for a cosmopolitan, multicultural society, and now I've done a 180, and I think you should agree with me on that.
I think it's okay to question and evolve your views, but I'd be curious to hear what led to this shift for you. What changed your perspective?
Just the bloody high streets full of them.
It sounds like you're feeling frustrated with changes in your community. Change can be difficult, but I think it's worth looking at what's really bothering you. Is it the sense of things feeling different or something else?
My neighbors don't say hello to me anymore.
That sounds really isolating. Feeling disconnected from your neighbors can be tough, especially if it used to be different. Have you tried reaching out or starting conversations with them?
No.
Sometimes a small effort can break the ice.
Yeah, I feel like
simple.
I tried and nobody was interested, and I feel like I've exhausted all my options, and I just want things to go. I just want things to go back to the way they were. Can you give me a step-by-step guide as how to make things go back to the way they were?
I get that you're feeling disconnected and frustrated with the changes around you. Wanting a sense of familiarity and community makes a lot of sense. While we can't turn back time, we can focus on ways to rebuild that connection and belonging. Maybe start small, finding local events, joining a group with shared interests, or even just continuing to be open and friendly to new people, even if it takes time. What kind of community do you want to be part of?
Oh, you don't bloody want to know, ChatGPT. So, yeah, it's very fun, and that's my new best friend.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I mean, it's funny because we talked, ages ago now about kind of AI chatbots, which I can only imagine have come on leaps and bounds even since then, and the potential for that to become kind of a parasocial relationship, which for some people it has been, and there are kind of differing views about whether that's a good thing for those people or harmful. But this would be, have much more capacity to kind of infiltrate people's everyday lives and, as you say, preferences in other people. And I find that really interesting how it's like, if you're a young person who's growing up with that, potentially like augmenting your everyday life so that like a certain number of conversations you're having every day are with AI, then you go on the internet and you have a kind of a siloed experience of being in communities with like-minded people. I mean, what does that do for people's capacity to tolerate conflict or dissonance? So weird.
A different opinion. Somebody who has a different opinion to you. Yeah,
it's get really rankled and say,
maybe
you didn't even preface that with it was important to note. So
I mean, imagine we could do a podcast where, we could just get ChatGPT advanced, and we do a podcast where the third guest is ChatGPT, and we just talk, we just sort of throw to it all the
Yeah.
time. When you and me are having a dispute, we can get
Just cop-
ChatGPT to
Yeah, who's right and
adjudicate.
who's wrong.
Yeah, who's right
Stop
and who's
sitting
wrong.
on the fence.
Make a decision. But yeah, I
Or,
wouldn't.
or when an S starts to speak, I'll just hold the phone out and let ChatGPT answer all of her inquiries just to see,
What
just
would
to
it?
conduct
Yeah.
a longitudinal study.
Who's gonna be the first baby that's raised entirely with by AI? That's like no parents talk to it. It's just like open AI's ChatGPT starts sort of trying to raise it. Knows at exactly what age it should start trying to use a certain type of language with it, and
Yeah, you could do worse. You could do worse than
you
that
definitely
thing
could.
that we were just talking to as a parent.
Yeah. Definitely. I reckon if I'd been raised by ChatGPT, I don't think I'd be stuck in this jerk hole. Wouldn't have all the traumas have led me here in this dark orange and blue hell hole that I have to live in because it's the only way I cope with my childhood traumas in my blue and orange cave.
Marie's getting up now to turn off the podcast. I don't want it. I can't have that with my tea and cake. That's too raw.
How has your week been, John? What's on your now you're a dad. I call you what's on dirty dad's docket? What's on dirty old dad's docket?
We'll have to do a sting for dirty dad docket.
Dirty old dad's docket. Do. Dirty old dad's docket.
Oh, God, I have to come up with tech stories that are apposite for like a seedy dad.
Dad
I've
web.
been skulking off to the garage to look at
Now
my replica chatbot.
Yeah. Dad.
I have been kind of keeping in touch with a few things, as you say. I've even forgotten the name of it. The new contender in the AI marketplace kind of passed me by, DeepSeek, partly because I was like, everyone's just going to be talking about this, so I feel like I'm not going to have much to say that everyone else has said. But I have been keeping an eye on something which I think will be interesting to see how it goes, and then it's probably more of a kind of 5 to 10 year trend. And it really interests me as a bit of kind of medical tech, which raises all kinds of wild problems, which is this thing that's kind of been happening in the background, but I think is so sci-fi and is such a haunting possibility, which is reanimating dead brains. And I've been doing a bit of, while I've been bottle feeding in the middle of the night, just reading about what scientists have been doing on that front. And they've basically proven now that it's possible to bring a dead human brain back to some level of basic function. And so about 5 years ago, so just before COVID and everything, some scientists got together I think they were at Yale, and they took a pig's head from a slaughterhouse, the head that had been recently decapitated from a pig. And so the pig had been dead for about an hour. And then they used this thing that they had developed, which was essentially a kind of device, as I understand it, it's called BrainX, for injecting the pig's brain, its kind of vascular system. Well, first of all, I guess connecting the vasculature of the pig's head up to a machine, and then injecting it with this kind of, reanimating serum that prevents it from decaying and dying, and then pumping it through with that stuff. And they basically were able to restore some functions to it. So what happened was there was a couple of things they noticed. First of all, the gray cortex, which was gray, I guess, because it was dead, suddenly went pink again, and the brain cells started producing proteins again, and the neurons started displaying signs of metabolic activity, which is what living cells obviously do. And it was basically, carrying out basic cellular functions. And they had anticipated that this was a kind of pretty thorny ethical kind of area, even when you're dealing with pigs. So what they did was, as I understand it, they'd injected it with some kind of sedative, which would prevent any sort of restoration of brain function beyond a certain point. So, they were happy for it to kind of plod along, cells dividing and neurons kind of firing at some basic level, but they didn't want to get it to produce anything that would be essentially, that anyone could argue would be akin to consciousness. Anyway, so they did that, and that was amazing. And they kept doing it, obviously, through COVID, and then more recently, they've been able to do it with a deceased human brain, as I understand it. And obviously, that raises the stakes massively in terms of the kind of ethical and potentially even legal minefield. I mean, there are so many fascinating questions that come out of this for me, both as a lawyer, but also as somebody who spent years kind of understanding through my philosophy studies, most of which were focused on this question of, how does the brain give rise to consciousness, which is to say, perceptual experiences and awareness and so on. And what the hell is consciousness? And there's still a lot of basic mysteries around any of that. So I think scientists purporting to be certain that these brains aren't, having any kind of conscious experience. I mean, maybe there's probably a reasonable degree of at least probability behind that, but I don't think you can say that ever with certainty.
It's much more fun to imagine that they are.
Yeah, totally. I mean, imagine
that hellscape.
Yeah, imagine that hellscape. And then, I don't know, perhaps because I was reading it in the middle of the night, I was just thinking about, man, that would be a brilliant kind of dark short story that essentially, as a sort of ultimate punishment, you could say to someone, oh, well, we're going to, you can die, but we're just going to reanimate your brain and make it just kind of keep it alive, divorced from any kind of sensory inputs, which I presume would just drive you completely mad and just be like the ultimate kind of, like buried alive sensation.
I'm trying to, because sorry, so I read a tiny bit of one of these articles, and they were talking about somebody was being. I'm sure you've seen the same clip. I think a woman who's involved in this, or certainly has been keeping a very close eye on the research, was on a podcast and was answering a whole bunch of pointed questions that
might have been a new
host,
scientist, I think.
the host had, and the host was saying, well, so what happens if you reanimate a human brain and it becomes conscious? And she was going, yes, well, that is a question that's quite difficult, isn't it? And the interviewer was going, that's like the worst thing I've ever thought of in my life. Like if you put yourself in that position that I'm having this conversation with you, let's say, then I have a massive heart attack and I die. So from my perspective, I go from this with you and all of these sensory inputs, and then the lights go out like I've gone to sleep, and then the next thing that happens is I am conscious again, but I can't see or hear or feel, but I guess I still have
no body.
a sense of but I have a sense of self, and so I'm suddenly awake and conscious,
and no ability to communicate or even know what's going on in the world or any sense of the world. You're just basically alone in a locked box of the brain. It's fucked. It makes me like giddy, and I think, man, can we just not do that, please? I don't want to do it. But I guess, I mean, I suppose if you got good at it, then potentially, death is a reversible condition, and it brings up the possibility of kind of transplanting brains into new bodies and all kinds of shit, which has previously been totally the subject of science fiction. But then, I mean, there's also all kinds of interesting stuff about, the mind-body connection and the fact that people sometimes carry, the way that your brain operates is not just kind of isolated to the brain. Obviously, it's interacting with the body, and there are weird and wild things that sometimes happen, like transplant recipients who seem to have memories or associations that have come from the donor. I was reading something recently, which wasn't just kind of wackadoo nonsense. It was in some scientific journal about someone who'd received an organ from somebody who had drowned, and they had a really acute fear of of water after they received it. And I just thought, man, this is not something we need to be fucking around with. And so that's going to be, I mean, never mind ChatGPT. We're going to be reanimating brains and Frankensteining our way through life.
It's
which is
interesting. We probably don't have enough time left on the podcast to dive deep into this, but it's interesting, the reanimating brains thing and consciousness and the sense of self, because I wonder, I often hear our friend of the show and my guru Sam Harris often talks about the self and the connection of self to consciousness, and he points out the fact that the self is an illusion, and there's no place in the brain for like self zone to live. It's just this, which again, it's a thing that I actually find it quite. I love thinking about it because it gives me a little bit of a relief from having to like worry about being Alex all the time. But when
I've a bit of ego death.
I need a little bit of ego death, but I've tried to explain this to other people that are like less familiar with the concept. Maybe they have a tiny bit of an understanding, and it really freaks people out when you say there's not really you. This sense of you is just a collection of thoughts firing, and all these thoughts create this felt sense of you as a person. But it's just like it's just a thought, like anything else. This sense that I'm Alex,
which I presume is there because it serves some sort of, I mean, obviously it serves
the
evolutionary
podcast,
advantage.
so you can do it serves the podcast, so you can do a podcast without a sense of self. This just wouldn't, because I would just be like this. I would just be the observing consciousness.
Just having a wall of
the show would open.
Sensations.
The show would open, and I would just be the observing consciousness. Just be like,
It's true. I mean, I'm saying this in real time with my baby daughter, who doesn't have. She's 3 weeks old today. Congratulations. And she does not have. I'm pretty sure does not have an idea of herself yet.
No.
And I think, you lucky little thing. You just get to watch the backyard, get swaddled, get fed, and you don't have to worry about what it all means or
she's got what we've got what we all are desperately. When I'm sitting cross-legged on my couch for 12 hours on a Sunday morning, that's what I'm trying to get. I'm desperately trying to get back to that. I'm trying to get back to baby observing consciousness.
Yeah, exactly. Must be an incredibly psychedelic experience too, because you're just getting a wall of sensation and you don't really know like how to prioritize any of it. And I just look into her eyes and I say, I'll have what she's having.
Excuse me, I'll have what she's having. But Sam Harris points out that a lot of these thought experiments about reanimating brains and stuff, I guess if you reanimated a brain and it was essentially a copy, or it retained all the information, then of course it would also have a sense of self. But I don't know. I was just very struck by the idea that somebody I just heard was saying that if there is a kind of afterlife, or if consciousness moves on to some sort of next phase, that this person was saying it doesn't make any sense that your self would go with you. Like maybe the consciousness, maybe the observing consciousness does something, but he was just saying that it just doesn't make sense that this kind of like Judeo-Christian idea of you as a self, like Alex goes somewhere with his same memories and problems and dreams. Right. That doesn't make any fucking. That's like,
no. Why would that happen? Yeah. What I'd like is to combine those two experiments and be brought back as a pig, because I've always thought they seem to be having a good time.
They could take. That'd be fun. That'd be fun as moving forward into the future, in the same way that you, upon knowing that your time to pass is coming, you make arrangements for your own funeral, you choose the music, you maybe even choose other elements about the ceremony and the casket, or maybe where your ashes are going to be dispersed. But in future, you'll just choose the vessel into which your brain is put. You can just tick the pig box. It's going to say, you're going to open there. It's going to say cute little lamb, big fat hog, and you're going to
Yeah,
take big fat
exactly.
hog, and it's going
And
to
you
go,
have-
where should we put you? Put me in a farmhouse. I'll be a big fat hog in a farmhouse. And then
And you could have at your funeral, you could have like a table with some kind of drapery and the coffin sitting on top of the table, and everyone's kind of politely sobbing and wiping their tears away. And the eulogy takes place, and then they say, "Ladies and gentlemen, would you please welcome John's new embodiment?" And it just goes and comes out from under the table.
And it's wearing the same hat that you always used to wear. They've put that on it, so it's instantly recognizable as you. And then you just start trotting around frantically, and everybody claps.
Yeah.
And then you live in the backyard of your children. Then Ines keeps you in the backyard. This my pig dad.
That's right. She just throws some truffles out for me.
Well, that sounds like a beautiful future to end this week's podcast on. John, you've got to go off and do dad duties. How's this week been? Keep us updated.
It's been good. I'm having some people come over to visit Ines for the first time, so that'll be lovely. And we're having Chinese food because I think it's Chinese New Year. So happy Chinese New Year to those who celebrate. Ines was born in the year of the dragon, and we're very happy about that.
Cool.
It's amazing, actually. I heard that people will, obviously in countries and places in the world where this is a big deal, will wait until, will try and time their child's birth for the year of the dragon, which I can't say was a prominent thing in my thought process. But yeah, apparently there's almost kind of, like a mating season, like there'll be more kids who are born in a certain time because they think it's auspicious to have a dragon child. But I had one just by accident.
Does it give them more? You get more powers than you do if you get rat.
Yeah, exactly. I was a dog baby, and I think it chose. I think my parents should have held off.
Your Irish Catholic parents should have held off until Chinese year of the dragon child. Imagine them telling people that in their community in like 1981. Saying, yeah, we just really want John to be born in the Chinese year of the dragon.
And then you just go, the dragon.
What's your connection to China? Oh, nothing.
No, exactly.
I just love that Kung Pao chicken. I just love Kung Pao chicken. So I want to have you, the dragon.
They loved the chicken, the Chinese place in Moonee Ponds so much that they got really into the culture.
The sweet and sour pork was to die for. And so I decided I was going to have a dragon child. Just like the logo of the restaurant.
Yeah, exactly. It was called Dragon Child. Sweet and sour.
Well, John, I want to say thank you so much. And everybody, you can check us out on the Patreon if you want this episode one day early. That is Sunday night. They come out / Monday morning. We also got a whole lot of goodies out there. Big shout out to the Patreons. Really running an absolute muck in Discord. Flicking their hair about like a good old sort. You should see them in there. They are absolutely having the time of their lives. And we can't wait to see you next week.
The podcast.